Good morning, everybody. This is Walk the Dog, Season 2, Episode 13. And today is Saturday. It's not a work day. Woohoo! So, get to relax today. That being said, what did I do? I prepped the questions for this. I also prepped the slides for the Monday morning meta report. And then, yeah, kids are going to be getting ready for the birthday party soon. So, yeah. Like I said, family day, but should be fine. Let's see. Yesterday, what did I do? I ended work a little early yesterday to kind of give myself a little bit of a light day. And I played a bunch of TFT, and I got to Grandmaster. Woohoo! I don't think I've been this high of LP since set 6 when I hit Challenger. That being said, I do think if I kept playing, I could make Challenger this set. But I really, really, really have to stop. I need to play. Like, this set in particular, there's so much. It's very fun. I'm really enjoying it. But I have to get working on future stuff. So, and the only way I can do that is to take my mind off of live. Like, splitting focus right now, I'm finding extra hard with just how deep set 16 is. So, that being said, on my journey to climb up, what I will say is tempo play works really, really well this patch. A lot of people right now, at least, are really lost how to play early game boards. And so that's allowing me to do quite well. Things like Tempo Jinx can work well. Tempo Teemo works pretty well. Get a lot of third and fourths. So, yeah. And then Ishtal's still pretty fun. Had a really fun Ishtal game where I ended up with like Ishtal Rise. That was kind of cool. But yeah, overall, I'll talk about it more in the Monday morning meta report. But in my opinion, this patch is significantly better than the last one. Still has its problems, but I don't know. For me, it's definitely a lot more fun. So, yeah. Okay. Questions. Like I said, gathered up some questions here. The first one is, how fast are learnings implemented in TFT? Could learnings that happened in set 14 make it into set 15? So the answer is TFT is a pretty agile team, and we always try to react quickly. If you want to go back to the old days, learnings would happen really, really quick because we were flying by the seat of our pants, just trying to like get the next set out the door and work on, things as fast as we could. Now that we're in this like 3 sets a year cycle, it's a little harder for sure, right? But what I will tell you is, so if you use it like a building a house analogy, it's like the foundation doesn't change, right? You can't really change the foundation once you've started. And maybe the frame doesn't change. But if you learn that there's a new type of windows that are better, you can still replace the windows as you build the house. And like that's kind of the analogy I would use. We definitely try to take some of the learnings for sure. And what I will say right now is we are getting some good learnings from set 16, and they are being applied to set 17 and 18. So, like, it definitely does happen, but that's not to say that we can do all of them, right? Like, a lot of the, dumb example here is, let's say we learn something about theming from set 14. We're not going to change the theming of set 15, right? Like, that's an example of the foundation that has already been established. Publishing materials have already been made. There's just the artwork's already been done. Like, that's not happening. But an example of a learning we could do is, like, let's say we learned that, hey, Diana having her shield not be monolocked was a massive problem. Well, certainly we can go into set 17, look at all the champions and being like, all right, anybody got a shield that isn't monolocking? Oh, you do? Oh, crick, we should get rid of that, right? Like, there's definitely learnings we can do there. Augments is another space where it's like, hey, we learned stuff about, like, let's say growth mindset, right? Like, growth mindset shouldn't be a thing, creates bad optimizations. So as you're preparing the 17 augments for finalization, make sure none of those augments have really bad optimizations. So definitely things can go well. And that is, one of the differences we talk about, like, other games versus TFT. Even at Nintendo, right? Like, you take a Mario versus Donkey Kong game and you finish it, And then the last 3 months are this like hardening period where you're just basically doing like bug fixing and really, really light adjustments. But otherwise, the game is mostly complete. And at any point in that process, if someone said stop and ship it, it'd be fine, right? But TFT, every set for 6 years now, almost 7 years, has come in hot, right? Like, if you told me we had to ship 17 today, we'd be screwed, right? Like, 17 has a lot of work still to do on it. Even though we've been going at it for a bit, there's still more to do. Like, we've not figured out a way to get like that far ahead of things. And again, I always use Magic as the comparison here. It's like, I know when Magic gets a learning, they can't really apply it for like 2 years because sets are already in production. They have to deal with like printing presses and things like that. So we're kind of the opposite, right? Like, we can definitely be extremely agile. And like I said, to that point, I mean, even set 16 right now is having people come in and go, hey, we should take some of these learnings and apply them to 17 and 18. And it's like, okay, so it's a lot of work. But yeah, so definitely opportunity to do that. But like I said, it also means it always feels like you're under the gun, trying to ship things, trying to improve the sets. And yeah, so there you go. All right. How do you feel about traits like sugar? So this one's actually, I'm combining two questions that I got into one. The first question was, how do you feel about traits like sugarcraft? And the second is, what is the power budget of like gold from things like shimmer scale in a trait? So generally what I will say is, if you look at like some of the criticisms of sets of the last 2 or 3 years, I think one of the most common things you'll see is these origins just feel like more stats. A lot of people do not enjoy traits that are just combat, like pure, just combat power, right? This is Street Demon. Well, what does Street Demon do? You stand in a hex and gain some AD and AP and HP. I think those are like, they're a nice baseline trait, but no one's ever really excited about them. And so the question becomes, well, what traits are they excited about? Well, ones that usually break rules. Well, how do they break rules? Well, usually by trading that combat power for resource generation. That is a very common paradigm that we use, and players love it, right? If you look at Ionia right now, what are the really fun Ionia ones? The gold generation one, the XP generation one. What are the not so fun ones? The ones where they gain some stats when they cast their spell, right? It's like players inherently have more fun right now with resource manipulation. Bilgewater on live is essentially more resource generation through the Silver Serpents, which is a lot of fun, right? Players really enjoy these types of traits. So to that end, what do I think about traits like Sugarcraft? I think they're great. I think resource generation traits are exciting. Players like feeling like they get to manipulate the core system. It adds depth to an already solved system, right? Like our core economic value system is essentially solved and has been for years, right? Get your gold up to 50, spend at certain points, et cetera, right? Like that system is pretty solved. But I think having those extra resource generation things that throw in like monkey wrenches into that is a good thing. Sugarcraft in particular was fun because it was like kind of like 8-bit as well, where it's like you're generating a high score and trying to see how high you can get. And the other thing that they do, and it's kind of funny because if you look at this as a bit of an example, is that they kind of have, how would I describe it? They kind of have quests, right? Like a lot of people, the reason they liked 8-bit and Sugarcraft was trying to reach the final breakpoint. It was almost like a mini prismatic trait before prismatic traits were a thing. And I think that was really cool. So I think 8-bit and Sugar, and like the fact that we reused 8-bit and Sugarcraft, I think was a really good thing. So yeah. And then to the second part of the question, which is like, what is the gold value of these things? The gold value, like I said, you can't have direct one-to-one, right? Like if we use the framework of a 3-piece trait, it's supposed to be about 30% power. Well, a 3-piece trait that generates econ can't be 30% power, right? You have to trade off some of that. So the question is, how much gold do you generate and trade off 4 AP. Now, we don't actually have a like really easy to use framework that you could just like copy paste when you're making a new trait. Because one of the big challenges of that is the fact that gold changes value as the game goes on, right? If you look at something like Yordle, a trait that gives you a single gold on 2-1, that's really valuable, right? We saw that all the way back in like set 6 Yordle, where we called it Drip Econ. Like Drip Econ is really, really good. But if you compare that to the current Yordle, which is like set 8 Yordle, the 8-piece version of the Yordle, actually we can give you like 7 or 8 gold in the late game, and that's totally fine, right? 8 Yordle doesn't break the game because getting that gold later, totally fine. So trying to equate it and say, well, yeah, every gold you generate is worth like 2 AD and AP on the trait, we can't really do that. So there is some challenges there, but we just kind of have to take that into account. And so I think if you look at, for example, like Ionia right now, post-nerf, it's like it can generate 1 to 2 gold per turn in the early game, which is really, really valuable. But in order to do that, the 3-piece trait only gives you like 10 AD and AP now in the early game, right? Pretty big trade-off. Bilgewater is another example where if you look at the actual trait combat power it gives you, you get that initial 20 AD and AP, and then like that's it for a while, right? Unless you buy stats and things like that. And even then, Bilgewater, I would say, is generally like over budgeted as far as trait goes in terms of resource generation. But definitely something you have to take into account. So it is a pretty big chunk of it, but at the same time, what you have to be careful of, and this is the really dangerous part, is that if the gold value ends up being too much of the trait, then the incentive to just get rid of the trait once the gold has been acquired is too high, right? And this was what happened with set 6 Yordle, right? Set 6 Yordle was generate a couple gold every round, you'd play that early game and then completely ditch the trait and play something else. Whereas if you look at 8 Yordle on live, it's like, yes, you can play 8 Yordle and generate a bunch of resources, but it's a lot harder to do because it happens late game. You've committed a lot of your comp, you've committed items to try to survive and things like that. And it does so in a way that's like really interesting and deep, right? Where it's like, to really take advantage of it, you have to be level 8, then you have to get to level 9, and then you have to transition a bunch of stuff. And like, that's an interesting choice. Whereas, hey, it's stage 2 where I don't really have any agency anyway, just play things, whatever, totally fine. And this is where I actually like the Ionia Gold one right now, because the Ionia Gold one at least requires you to get kills. You can't just like open fort lost streak it. So you do have to play strong boards to get that gold. Whereas the XP one at least requires, that one's it's less resources per turn, but at least you can lost streak with that one. Now this also came into play with Bard's design. Interestingly enough, the first version of Bard actually had it be grant rerolls on win and a unit for your board on loss. And what we found was it was like basically getting a unit that you want was really, really valuable. And getting the really valuable thing on loss created a way to be incredibly consistent. And so we ended up having to like switch those back and forth. And there were definitely times though where Bard was just like this incredibly consistent thing that would almost guarantee your 3 stars. So we didn't properly account that budget and had to nerf that and adjust that and go from there. So yeah, TLDR here. I like Sugarcraft, would do stuff like that again. Think it's healthy. I like resource generation traits in general. There's a lot of the really fun and novel stuff in TFT. We have to be careful with inflation, but overall, good stuff. And you definitely have to account for it in power, because otherwise you end up with fast 9 metas and things like that. And even when we are careful with stuff like 8 Yordle, we can miss if it's not done right. So there you go. All right. Next question. How would you feel? So Mort, you do a lot of honest communications and stuff like this with Walk the Dog and whatever, which is really neat. I'm just reading the question, by the way. How would you feel if other companies, like say a tech company like Jira, tried to do Walk the Dog? And how would you convince higher ups that it's a good idea to pursue such a thing? This is an interesting one because let's be clear, I'm not even convinced that everyone at Riot thinks what I do is a good thing. But the reality is, if you think about a company's purpose, right? Like let's pick any company, right? Jira, Riot, Nintendo, whatever, right? A company, just like anything else, has to have its primary goals. Like, what is our goal, right? It can be your Pepsi and your goal is to sell as much soda as possible, right? Like that could be an example goal. Or your goal could be to, cure a disease, right? If you're a medical thing. It really just depends on what your primary goal is. And then everything else is a means to accomplish that goal, right? Running the business is essentially like, well, I have to do the paperwork and the salaries and the generation to achieve that primary goal, right? The reason I believe that what I'm doing here makes sense for Riot is that Riot's primary goal, and I do believe this isn't just some corporate talk, like the primary goal of Riot is, founded by two guys who really like games, is to make deep games for gamers that really enjoy those games, right? You can watch all the documentaries on like Mark Merrill and Brandon Beck and stuff like that, and it's like, that's what they wanted. They wanted games for people who were obsessed with games. And that is the primary goal, right? And to that end, my belief is that if we're making games for people who are obsessed with games, it turns out what those people want is to be treated like humans and talked to honestly about the thing they love, to have deep, honest conversations about the thing they want to get obsessive over. Not to be given a line of bullshit, not to be given a line of corporate shill, whatever. They want to be really explained. This is why we're doing this thing, right? And like, they want to hear the conversation of like, the reason we did this was so that we can make more money, so that we can hire more people to make cool things, right? Like that is what they want to hear, not, well, we believe it's in the player's interest to have the variety of choices, blah, 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 blah. No, like just come out and say the truth, right? And so I believe that something like Walk the Dog is in spirit of the primary goal of the company. Now, to your point about Jira, do I believe that Jira's primary goal is to have like people go deep on their tech stuff? No, I don't think so. I don't know. I don't work at Jira. So I guess I'm skeptical that the things that Jira is trying to accomplish would require someone like me talking about things in great detail. Now, that may not necessarily, like, it's like, so let's pick a different company. Let's pick YouTube, right? Like, YouTube's an interesting company because I think they could have a lot of different goals, right? Their goal could be to be the number one entertainment platform, or their goal could be to be, I don't know, right? I don't work for YouTube. But depending on their goals would determine if someone like me being open and communicative would match those goals. And that's how you'd answer that question, right? And so, because again, your question is like, well, how would you convince higher ups that it's a good thing? And the way you would do that would be to align to the company's core goals that they're trying to achieve and show that because we're trying to achieve this, if we do this thing, it will be better and we will achieve our goals better, right? And so again, in the case of TFT, my theory here is that if people have a dev that they can talk to and they know understands the game, that they will trust and be deeper engaged with the game and make them enjoy it more, right? That is the theory. And so that would be, I think, the tough part. Now, Nintendo is an example where, like, I will tell you, that wasn't their goal. Their goal is not to get the obsessive, fans who are like diehard on games. Their goal is to create games for everybody that are like, want to try and like enjoy and play lighthearted, engage in the product lightly and have fun, right? Like, just having moments of light fun was Nintendo's goal when I was there. And so they don't need somebody talking about like the frame data of the puzzle game or anything like that. They just need it to look charming and exciting and high sticker appeal, right? So someone like me working on a game like a Nintendo, I don't think would exist because it wouldn't match the company's primary goal, right? And I think if you look at how they handle, for example, like the Smash Brothers community, I think that really shows that like that doesn't match their core company goal. Their core company goal is games for everybody that are fun, that are interesting, and anyone can get into, not niche, super deep kind of games. So again, to answer your question, how would I feel if other companies did this? Cool, if it made sense. But also, again, it has to really match the company goals. And if you wanted to convince someone to do it, you have to align with that. So, and I will say I have seen some other, people start to do some of this stuff. And I'm not pretending like I'm some pioneer or anything like that. There were people doing it long before I did, So I just, again, where possible, I think the things that we have interest in, having access to somebody who can tell you how it is a good thing. So I don't know. I try not to overthink it also, right? Which is just, my job is, hey, if you really like TFT and have questions about TFT, I'm happy to answer them for you because I know a lot about TFT and I'll tell you everything I can. I can't tell you everything because I still work at a company. There are still things that are secret, but I'll tell you what I can, So there you go. All right. I think I had one more. Actually, I had two more questions, but I think we're only going to get through one here. Why are TFT changes heavy towards the 1% and not the 99%? Now, this person typed a really long question. It was really good. It was really well done. It was like, hey, me and my friends are at like the platinum level, and we feel like changes are targeted at these like high elo players, and it makes the game less fun for us. Okay. And I like this question because this is probably the single hardest part about my job and my role, is that everyone thinks you're doing it for the other group. And what I mean by that is if you ask high elo players right now, I would bet that they would tell you that, hey, they leave things like the Rise portal in the game, and they add these 4 fun augments that are silly, and they just buffed emblems, and they make prismatic traits and prismatic augments and things like that that make the game less competitive, and they do it to appeal to the casual players, and Riot only cares about the casual players more than the hardcore. On the flip side, you get people who are like, hey, Riot is balancing all the fun out of the artifacts. Now they're not spiky and interesting, and they're making it less likely to see spatulas and things like that, so I never get to hit the fun stuff. And they nerfed all the fun and double up. I can't send 2-star units anymore, so I don't get to hit 3-star 4 costs as much. And the odds of seeing augments are less. They didn't make as many hero augments this set, and they're doing this only because they care about the competitive players, and Riot only likes the top 1%. This is a very common thing, and I will tell you, I get this a lot even internally, right? Like I have coworkers who will say, I only care about high elo. And I have coworkers who say, I care too much about the casual base. This, like I said, this is the number one hardest part about my job that I deal with every day, is balancing the conceptions of where I'm appealing. But the answer, the honest answer, and has been the answer for 6 years, and is still true to this day, is that the answer is both. What I care about, first and foremost, in order, is a game with a lot of fun things in it, right? We try to make lots and lots and lots of fun things that you can do in this game. Then figure out how we can ride the line of those fun things being fair and competitive enough to create an awesome competitive experience for those who want to do it. So that has always been the methodology that I'll use to try to make TFT the best game it can be. Now, if you want to say that means that I'm catering to casuals first because that's step one, sure, fine. If you want to say that means I'm catering to hardcore because I'm making things less fun, sure, right? Like these are both true and not true at the same time. The reality is, one of the common things that gets brought up in this person's question was it's like, TFT is so hard to get into because it's only for people that are like super hardcore. This is something I actually feel really strongly about. if you look at a lot of accessible video games, I'm not going to throw any under the bus, but I think a lot of games who have like 5-minute play times and are accessible and pretty easy to get into, but kind of fun, what ends up happening with those games is people are like, that was really cool. I enjoyed that. That was fun. It was a good game. And then they move on. They stop playing it, right? They're like, cool. Again, I really don't want to call out other games, but like, I can definitely think of at least one game recently where it's like, wow, the production value on this game is amazing and it's really cool and the games last 5 minutes. And then I played for about 10 hours and I was like, okay, I've seen it all and I'm done and I'm bored, right? And I never play the game again. I believe it is really important that TFT is deep. Now, the fact that some of our players play 500 games, 600 games, 1,000 games a set is because the game is deep and there's so much to do. And I think that goes back to what Riot was trying to create with like League of Legends and things like that, is deep games for people who really want to go into them. Now, does that mean it's less accessible? It can, right? Is Smash Brothers less accessible because wave dashing exists? You can make the argument, but at the same time, I would argue Smash Brothers is accessible. You can sit down and have fun with it very easily, but it is also deep. I feel the same about TFT. TFT is accessible in that you can start building armies and play and whatever, but even the person asking the question is like, I'm platinum. Well, it sounds like you've already passed the accessible part. Now you're in the deep part, and we need the game to be deep so that people can enjoy it for a long time. That is a very good thing. I feel so strongly about this. So that, TFT remains a relevant and exciting game to play for a long, long time. I think Set 16 made the game even deeper with the expanded champions and the fact that we have 100 champions. The game is deeper. Does that mean it is less accessible? I don't necessarily think so. So I guess all of this is to say that like the primary goal here is for TFT to be a deep game that you can play for thousands upon thousands of hours. And in order to do that, we have to kind of keep the structure, right? Like part of this person's question was like, why aren't games shorter? Well, it turns out when games are shorter, there's a lot less decision-making points. And when there's a lot less decision-making points, it becomes easier to solve what the decisions are, right? Short games inherently just have less decision points so that it becomes easier to optimize what are the best decision points, which inherently can make it less deep. I think we've shortened TFT as much as we can, but I don't think the answer is make TFT a 10-minute game, Now, I know there are people who are like, but I liked Hyper Roll. Well, I mean, so did I. But let's be real, Hyper Roll was not a casual experience either. But it was less deep than the core game. It was really just build strong board, stay alive, go. Like, that was kind of how Hyper Roll worked. So, yeah. So again, the question is, why are TFT changes heavy towards the 1%, not the 99%? They're not. They're not. It's a balance between both. I think the one exception here, by the way, the one exception to this is balance. Balance, unlike even League. League, for example, has to do the like high elo and low elo balance thing. But that's because one of the things League has to deal with is things like APM, right? Like how hard is it to pilot Lee Sin versus Master Yi, right? TFT doesn't have that. TFT, if you have a guide and someone over your shoulder telling you how to play the game, you can hit Master no problem. And so because of that fact, we balance TFT as if it was a high elo thing only, right? Like the actual numerical balance decisions have to be done around high elo. And the few times we even break this, we get in trouble for it, right? Like I'll use high risk traits as the exception, right? Your fortune traits. Traits like fortune, we will end up actually being a little like, if we balance those around high elo, only 100 people would be able to play the damn things, right? And I think even like Ishtal right now, I would bet you a lot of high elo players would say like, oh, Ishtal's broken, But generally, we have to balance it as if computers were playing the game. Now, like I said, Set 16 is presenting new challenges here because of all the sets, Set 16 definitely has the widest gap between what's good at each elo. I actually, just like I said, I was prepping the slides for the Monday morning meta report, and man, the good augments is so different this time. There are so many augments that are like insane at low elo, like the Noxus augments, that in high elo are just like, they're just okay to bad. So, yeah. So, again, if you feel that way, like, I get it, but just know that everyone feels that way because the game is not perfectly crafted for them. But my priorities continue to be incredibly deep game that you can play for thousands of hours, that can be played by anyone, but once you go deep, is a well-balanced game with lots and lots of options that anyone can play. That will continue to be the priority. And so, do I think that means we're catering to the top 1%? I don't believe so. Does it mean we're catering to casuals? I also don't believe so. But I understand, like I said, I've been dealing with this for 6 years. I deal with this internally. I'll never please everyone and get it right, because when you tread the line, sometimes you make both sides sad. So, yeah. All right, that's it for now. Hopefully, what's the time? Oh yeah, 30 minutes. We went long. Okay, sorry I yapped so long. Okay, cool. This video goes up Sunday, which means no video Monday because of Monday morning meta report, which means I'll see you guys again on Tuesday. So, all right. That's going to do it for me. Until next time, take it easy.